Look what I've got. It's CPU cooler installation time. Hooray! That means we're making real progress on getting this computer done for my niece and taking it over to her and making her happy. And getting her started on the road to becoming a successful, not just regular paper and pencil, whatever kind of artist, but also a graphics artist. I'm getting more and more excited the further along I go with this project, especially since I had to delay it for so long. Let's see. So this is the Thermalright Peerless Assassin 120. It's pretty famous. Some people say it's the best cooler out there. Now, for the CPU that I've got, the i5-12600K, it's perfectly fine. It's enough. However, if you're buying a really hot CPU, this is not enough. I don't care how many people online on whatever forum says, oh, you've got the hottest CPU in the universe, you can use the Peerless Assassin. A lot of people say that because they're just listening to what has been said in all the reviews about the Peerless Assassin without paying attention to the fine details, which says that this only does a good job until it gets above the thermal limit of this device. And the hottest CPUs from Intel and AMD go over the maximum thermal dissipation capacity of the Thermalright Peerless Assassin. It doesn't matter which version of the Peerless Assassin it is. You're going to need something better. You're going to need maybe the Phantom Spirit, the Frost Tower, the Frost Commander, or the Frost Spirit, because this one can't handle it. Now, I don't remember what the maximum is, but please keep in mind that whatever the TDP is, or which is the rating for the maximum wattage in terms of heat that it can handle, it doesn't actually necessarily match the CPU. They don't always get it right. And there are variables involved that make it complicated. Now, I originally had planned to keep this one for myself to do some testing with, but they're very inexpensive. A little bit more for some of the other ones I mentioned, but this one is, usually under $40. All right, so I've got thermal paste. Yes, I can speak. It's just that my tongue and my brain don't always cooperate with each other. And we've got the mounting kit parts. And what we need to do right now is to take out the ones that we're actually going to need. And in order to do that, we have to pay close attention to what's on here and also to the manual, which I have to find. It's got to be in here somewhere. Ah, there it is. You're going to want your manual because it'll tell you what's for AMD and what's for Intel. And that information is right there. Parts list, it tells you. So if you look, hey, you're not looking, look down. Ah, there we go. Thank you for looking down. So you can see the heatsink and the fans. And here is a Y splitter. So you can connect, if you don't have, some motherboards have two CPU headers like mine does, or this one does, and mine also does. And some only have one. So if you only have one CPU port for connecting fans, you're going to need the patch cord or the splitter cord, which combines the two fans into one that you can connect to one CPU fan header. If you have two headers like this, you don't need to use this. And here is the Intel bracket. It's straight. The AMD bracket is curved. We will need the fan clips. We will need the screw bolts and the LGA 20XX screw. We'll need that. No, wait. No, we won't need that one. And then we won't need that one because that's 1150 something. So it could be 1150, 1151, 1155, whatever. We won't need that. And this is LGA 2000 something. So we won't need that. We'll need the tightening nuts. We'll need the standoffs. We don't need the, if you're doing in AMD, you're going to need the AM4 screws. And here's the standoffs for the LGA 1700 coolers and CPUs. And here is the back plate that you'll need for that, and also for the 1150 whatever series. Plastic pads, screw bolts. All right, and the instructions start with AMD. So let's go ahead and pull out what we need for Intel. Sorry about the noise from my computer. Lots of things going on, I guess. And I'm not participating, so here is the patch cord that allows you to connect two fans into one CPU header. Don't need that. I'm going to set that aside. Here are the fan clips for mounting the fans onto the CPU cooler. I'm going to set that aside for later. And just so you can see them, here are the AMD brackets. I don't need that. I'll set it aside. And these are the Intel brackets that we will need. Put that over. I'll just put that over here. Let's see, what else do we have? If you have a CPU that has a socket 1150 something or 1200, you'll need those. Otherwise, I'm setting those aside because I don't need them. If you are going to be doing AM4 or AM5, you'll need those. But I am not doing that, obviously. So these may be the ones I need. I'm going to have to double check the instructions. Here is the Intel backplate that we're going to need to use for LGA 1150 something and 1700, which this is a 1700. So I'll set that aside. And then the screw bolts for the 1700 are right here. I don't know why they call them screw bolts. They're really like nuts. But, and it's hard to tell them apart from those. So don't take these out if you don't need them, because then you'll be confused. All right, so I'm going to put these over here. Stand them up so they don't go rolling off onto the floor somewhere. I'm going to put away this stuff that I don't need. Okay, now again, red is for AMD, blue is for Intel. Always remember that when they talk about red team versus blue team, they mean AMD and Intel. Because if you think about it, what color is the box that an Intel CPU comes in? Blue. And AMD's come in boxes that are orange and red. So that makes it simple. So we're going to need some or all of the stuff on this side. There we go. Now, some people would argue with me, and they're going to say, Glenn, you should have installed the CPU cooler first, because now this is creating a hassle. But again, my goal is to make sure that the CPU cooler is not going to interfere with the graphics card, the RAM, and the M.2s. That's why I've done it last. So now we need to get out our heatsink. Which is like this. Now, you're wondering, well, which way do I install it? Do I install it like this, or like this, or like this, or like this? Now, if you look at them, if you look at this side, you'll see that they are, I'm going to take off that little piece of foam, they are identical on both sides. So, in this way, you can also see the same thing, that they are identical. Now, I'm not actually installing it right now. I just want to make sure it's not going to interfere with this and this. So I'm going to just gently place it on top of where the CPU is and make sure. And lo and behold, there's tons of space over here, thicker than my thumb, and also it's offset from the RAM. So unless I wanted to install later on a second piece of RAM here, I'm probably, second pair of RAM that is, I'm probably not going to have any problems whatsoever with that. It's not in the way of my graphics card. It does partially look like it's going to cover up the M.2 slot that I've already filled up. And that's one of the other reasons to fill up the first one first, unless it competes with the graphics card, is so that you don't have to worry about having to take off your cooler later in order to install an M.2 in that position. So now that I know that this will fit correctly, I need to point out to you a couple of things. One, if you can, wear gloves while you're handling this. I don't have any gloves. Well, I think I do actually, but I don't know where they are. The reason I say that is because this is made from aluminum, and aluminum does get discolored by the oil on our hands. So if you have a bare aluminum cooler like this one, you'll definitely want to have gloves on so that this doesn't end up looking ugly over time if that's something that's important to you. It's not important to me, but there are people for whom it is extremely important. Now, the one thing I wanted to point out to you is look at the asymmetry of the pipes. We can see that the pipes are coming farther out on this side than they are on this side. And that's important because that affects how we can mount it. Now, do we want to mount it this way? Well, look at the shape of the CPU. It's a rectangle. This is also a rectangle. Therefore, we cannot install it like this because they cross each other instead of matching each other. They cannot be perpendicular, they have to be parallel. So we can only install it like this, or maybe like this. Now we have to look at, if I put it like this, is it interfering with the VRMs? Well, it's not at this time, but maybe once I got it fully installed, it probably won't interfere with it. However, it may potentially, because this is a heatsink, heat from here is not going to actually mostly radiate in this direction, because remember, the motherboard is going to be vertical on most cases unless you buy a desktop case that lies flat on the desk instead of standing up on the desk. So if you have a standing case, like most cases are, then a little bit of heat will radiate from here in the direction of this, causing a little bit of extra heat in the fins on this side. But if it's lying flat, you're going to get a bunch of heat coming off of this VRM into the heat sinks on this side. So if you flip it over, now it's not over the VRM, which relieves you from the possibility of that happening. However, there is a problem in that now it's close to your graphics card, and since it's standing up, the heat from the graphics card is naturally going to be radiating upward toward your heatsink. So what should you do? Well, if you have a large case, you can still turn this around and install it like this, because it's better to catch less heat from the graphics card than from the VRMs, because graphics cards tend to get hotter than VRMs do in general. Also, however, you need to consider, if you have a small case, you may not be able to install it this way, because not only will it be next to the VRM, it may also take away the space you need up here for the top mounted fans. So you have to look at your case and determine which way is going to work best for your situation. And I have to do that now. So I'm going to pop open the case, and I'm going to do a little bit of measuring to make sure I'm not installing it the wrong way, because then I'd have to, take it back out and reinstall it. And, it's not a big deal, but I don't want to go through the hassle. So measure twice and cut once, as they say, or in this case, measure twice and install once. Oh, by the way, before I forget, if you're planning to make this and ship it to somebody else, do not ship it with the graphics card and the cooler installed unless you pack a lot of packing material in between the spaces and use like paper or something else that is not electrically conductive, so it doesn't have static electricity destroying things. If you do not do that properly, with these things being as heavy as some of them are, and this is, it gets fairly heavy once you have the fans on it. This is going to be heavy too, and as it's bouncing around, because these package delivery services, Amazon, DHL, UPS, FedEx, and all these other ones, they don't care. Boxes get dropped, boxes get thrown. Even the post office does it. So do not, unless you can guarantee that you can pack it safely, do not ship it with anything heavy attached to the motherboard, or it will likely destroy your motherboard. Okay, so I checked, and it's going to be fine with it overhanging the VRM. I'd rather have a little bit of heat from the VRM and reduce the heat because the fans will be pulling heat off of the heat sink, than have a lot of heat getting into the heat sink from the grasshopper, the graphics card. You can laugh with me. I don't care. It's okay. Now, one very important point when you're installing any kind of cooler is there's going to be a piece of plastic that's protecting what's called the cold plate, which is this thing right here. And that is so you don't get your fingerprints on it, your oil on it, because then you have to use isopropyl alcohol and a lint-free cloth in order to remove any kind of oil you get on there. If you have removed it and your paste is not usable, like if you install it and then you realize, oh, I installed it wrong, and you just flip it around, no big deal, as long as the paste is relatively uniform already. If you don't, however, well, then you're going to have a problem, because if the paste isn't uniformly across this, or it's dry, you have to reinstall, or not, reapply the paste. So you'll need to use isopropyl alcohol and lint-free cloth to remove that paste. There are other ways to do it, but that's probably the cheapest way to do it. You can buy kits for it as well, but those are overpriced. So, just go to your local grocery store or pharmacy and buy it really cheaply there. So, before I do that, however, because, I really have to make sure to show you the right way to do this, because I don't want to give you a bum steer on this. And please also remember that every cooler, no matter what brand, is going to have some variations on how to install it. Some will use a back plate, some won't use a back plate. Some will use a lot of screws, some won't use any. Some will have standoffs, some of them will not have standoffs. It just really, really depends. So you have to look carefully at your instructions. So this is for 1150 and 1200, this is for 2000, and here it is for 1700. And those are the instructions. So I have to follow that. And once that's done, all I have to do is attach the fans, plug them into the motherboard, and Bob's your uncle, as people like to say overseas, and I think it's the UK and Australia or something like that. It's not really something I hear people saying in America. So it's kind of strange to me why they say Bob's your uncle. But hey, who am I to complain? Americans say goofy stuff all the time. Sometimes really goofy stuff. I'm just reorienting this so it's not going to be too dark for you. All right. Now, the instructions say, oh, that's the Chinese side. Oh dear. Okay, let me get my parts ready here. I've got my 4 screws. Whoa, come on to here. Come on, out. Okay. that away. So let's place it for those. 5 of those. Oh, they gave me an extra. How nice of them. 1, 2, 3, 4 of these. And 1, 2, 3, 4 of these. And 4 of these. So, install the Intel backplate from the back of the motherboard using the correct mounting position. So you'll need to look at this because this actually has 2 positions for screws. There is the 1700 mounting position on the outside, and on the inside is for 1200 and 1150. And so you need to make sure that you position it at the outermost. And then I'm going to take off the graphics card just because it's going to really overcomplicate this process if I don't. Now remember, if you have to remove the graphics card, make sure to turn this that way, or push it that way. I mean, if you don't have it like this, when you pull this off, a couple of things can happen. This can snap. However, more likely what's going to happen is something is going to crack in here, and there are going to be trace circuitries in this board that are going to get damaged, and probably also there could be damage to the motherboard itself. So always make sure to push that down, or you're going to screw yourself, and that's bad. So I'm going to put this out of the way, safely over there. And that's ready. Okay, turn this over. And you can see there's already a back plate. You're going to leave that where it is. You're going to take the back plate from the cooler mounting kit, and you're going to place it. It's going to be going like that. Now, in this case, I'm going to be using P. So P, no, not PP. P is the screw bolts, which are these ones here. They're the longer ones. And this is N. This thing is N. All right, so we're going to need to switch the head on my screwdriver to a little bit bigger one. I have a much better kit than what Linus Tech Tips offers. You only get a few heads with that one. I have 90 heads, or 90 something heads, I think it is, including extras. So we want to put these in here. Now you can't actually screw them in. Nope, it's not going to screw in at all. But you do want to make sure that you're getting it in the position for 1700, which again is that way. And that. And that. And that. Now here's the tricky part. You have to flip this over without these screws being displaced. So the trick to do this is you use a piece of cardboard like this that came with the cooler, and then you can put that there, flip it over, put it down, and then you're going to separate them from each other, which is easier said than done because of the friction, but that's okay. There we go. And all four of them are coming through, which is fantastic. Let me see if I can turn this the other way. I didn't lose anything. If my board gets scratched up, it's going to be a little bit sad, but I will get over it. All right, now I need to take, let's see, plastic standoffs. Oh my gosh. The standoffs go on the other side. See, I'm not perfect. I misunderstood what I was seeing. So I gotta flip it back over. No big deal. Just a minor inconvenience that I didn't realize. So we'll go like this. Put that there. Wonder if it'll be easier this way. Ah, it'll be easier this way. They could have indicated this, that you can do it like this. And that's a lot easier. One more. All right. Now again, you want to push it to the edge, the corner, outside corner position, and then put it in place. It doesn't actually matter whether it's this way or this way because it's symmetrical. And you're never going to look at it except for when you have to, if you ever like decide you go on to get a different cooler. Come on. This one is not. There we go. Let's see, are those? Okay. There. And now it's actually even easier to flip it over. I don't know which way is the best way for you guys. No, don't run away. Don't roll away. Okay. All right. I think that'll work out well enough that way. All right. Now that we've got it turned over, come on. Where'd that piece go? The best laid plans with the PC Expert Amateur can go afoul. All right. According to this, we're going to install the metal brackets. So we need these first. And it doesn't actually explain which side goes up. So I'm going to assume for the protection of the motherboard that the plastic side goes against the motherboard to protect it from damage. So you're going to screw these in place. Hand tighten. Please do not force it to be more than hand tightened. Put them all on. Actually, don't even tighten them fully. Just get them mostly on. And once you've got them mostly on, then you can go back and tighten all of them. So I'm just tightening them to the point where I feel resistance, which means that they've hit. This is going to be the hard one. Oh, that's awkward. They've hit the motherboard. That's really not well thought of. All right, now I can tighten all of them. If I hadn't done it this way, I would have had problems with one of them maybe being, one of the screws maybe being not all the way through the hole. Just hand tighten it like that. Then we're going to take the brackets, and we want the post side up with the knobbly things here pointing toward the middle. So we just lay it across like that. And we are going to take the eye screws, which are, would be the little ones. Okay. And we're going to screw them into place to hold these brackets. And again, you want to just partially, don't misthread it, just partially tighten it so it's against the metal, but oops, not all the way attached, because you may have to adjust the positioning to make sure that you can. So there's a little bit of play there, and you can get both of them in. All right, now that it is in place, I can tighten it. Ooh, I need a larger head than this one. Let's see. So you're going to need more than one size of head. More heads are better than less. And no offense, Linus Sebastian, but you obsessed so much over certain details, you ignore the fact that there are a lot of different kinds of screws and bolts used in the IT industry. You obsessed over having them stored in the handle when you could have had it a handle that stored some, plus also having some in a carrying case. And that to me was a tactical error, because it ooh, wait a second, I don't like that. This is not. What is going on with this one? These two are fine. These two are not. They're not aligning correctly. I'm not sure why. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just tighten these up a bit so they don't fall off. So I'm going to flip this over and just double check that the that these didn't shift, because these two are the ones that are misaligned somehow. I'm not really sure why they're misaligned, so I gotta fix that problem. Right, that one seems to be okay. That one seems to be a little bit off. So I think this one's slightly off kilter. So I'm going to try to adjust that one. But that means that I got to loosen up all this other stuff. So I'm going to have to take off this. So you got to do some eyeballing to make sure that you don't end up incorrectly installing that. And now, okay, should be able to loosen this one up. I thought. What the heck? Oh, I'm doing the right one. There we go. There we go. I want to make sure that this time I don't misalign this one. It really is not being cooperative. Well, these are things that can happen. You think you got it all in there correctly, and then you discover that no. And I'm not sure exactly how that managed to happen, but it happened. That is strange. All right, give me a minute while I fix this up. And once again, I misunderstood the instructions, so I've got the brackets on the wrong way. I was looking at it, I was like, wait a second, this is not matching up. So I've got that positioning problem resolved. This is my first time installing a Thermalright. I would say that the experience that I had with installing the Noctua U12A on my computer was easier than this. I did not have any problems with things getting off kilter like I am with this one. So this actually goes like this. Alright. Man, oh man. But at least I discovered that I had that misalignment problem. Hopefully, it's on the other side too. Alright, well, more adjustments are necessary. Thermalright, you need to improve your mounting system so that the underside bolts cannot slip out of the correct position. This is annoying. Okay, so I got it correctly positioned and I made sure that it would actually be able to mount correctly. So now I had to keep these loose in order to make sure the positioning was perfect for the heatsink. And I've done that. So now I'm just tightening down those 4 retainers. I think the reason that the Noctua was so much easier to install was because they didn't use the fat knurled ones like this. They used plastic retainers that were sitting in this position, so you didn't have this additional barrier to success, which is a simple fix, but it's a smart one because this just makes it harder to install. I mean, I did not have this kind of difficulty with my Noctua U12A. And this one over here is really irksome. And that is not the fault of Thermalright, it is the fault of Asus for making this motherboard design like this, such that it is hard to do that. Which Thermalright compounded by not using standoffs, plastic standoffs, and instead used those unnecessary bolts, double-barreled bolts. Okay, so now I'm just going to double check and make sure that this side is still tight. And oh, by the way, another problem with LTT's wonderful screwdriver is it does not have an extendable neck like this one does. See? And you're going to need a long shaft for installing the heatsink onto this, as you will see just momentarily. And apparently, I don't need these at all. I'm not sure what's up with that, but that's fine. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to apply the paste. Now, there are a lot of different ways to apply it. If you happen to have a nice kit like I do that, again, I'm picking on Linus Tech Tips for not providing a full kit, I've got a spreader that comes with my kit. See? You can have a smaller side, you can have the big side, there are even larger things than that. But with this, I can do this like that. If you don't want to do it that way, if you don't want to deal with the mess of it like that, what you can do instead is you can do different kinds of configurations of thermal paste here. And there have been different videos that demonstrate what works better than what does. And I'm going to go with the line technique, which is like this. This is kind of thick paste, so it's a little bit irritating, but and I'll just have to make sure I'm going to have to spread this, I think. With the Noctua paste, it's easier to spread it and therefore make sure that you've got it fully installed, but this one is a little bit more challenging. It's also easier to spread the Noctua paste. This, partially, it's not the fault of Thermalright, just because my room is cold. But still, this does present a bit of a challenge. And since this is non-conductive material, you don't have to worry about it slopping over into the area around the CPU. If you're using liquid paste, a liquid metal paste, I mean, you will have to be very careful to not put too much on and not let it get down in those areas. Or it could short out your parts. You know what? I'm going to hold this in my hand to warm up the paste a bit, and then we'll continue. All right, it should be warm enough now, so I'm going to add some more. There isn't actually very much in this syringe. In fact, wow, that's it? I seem to have run out. Whoop. Wow. Okay. Didn't have as much in there as I thought I did. Oh, wait a second. Yeah. It's basically empty. So we'll have to make do. I think I actually might have used this on something else, and that's why I've run out. Oh boy. This stuff just does not want to spread in this temperature. All right, hold on while I get this sorted out. All right, with the temperature being what it is, that's about as good as I'm able to get it. So we're going to go ahead and proceed with the installation. Now, again, do not forget to remove the plastic. Failure to remove it will result in temperature problems. And again, I'm having it over the VRM so it doesn't get so close to the graphics card. You want to line up these. You want to line these things up with these posts here, which are actually threaded, because these are not actually screws. They actually have a hole in them. And it feels like there's a magnet too, which is fine with me. There's one. And another one. I'm just going to go back and forth. What the heck? Okay, that's not lined right. Back up. Okay, that's better. Pretty sure Linus Tech Tips screwdriver doesn't have this long shaft like mine does. This is from Strabito. When I got it, it was 30 something now, and I think it's up to 40 at this point. Yeah, that's looking pretty good there. It's just taking a minute to get it screwed all the way in. Oop, that one's tight. And no, that one's tight. And that should be, now that I've gotten past the insufficiencies of the Thermalright system, should be good. And I can clean off my spreader of all this excess that got stuck to it that I couldn't use because it wouldn't come off again. throw that away. And now you can see that it's installed. And hooray! So this means now I can put the graphics card back on. But actually what I'm going to do, what I discovered was when I was testing out the positioning, that it was a little bit awkward with the graphics card in the slot. So I'm going to not put the graphics card in until I get the motherboard onto or into the case, actually. And that's going to make it just a wee bit easier for me. So that's all there is for this video, except for attaching the fans. And that's pretty easy. So we should be done with this video in just a few short minutes. So let's finish this up then. All we gotta do is attach the fans, and there are only 2 of them. Oh, the hard stuff is done now that the mounting is passed. And that shouldn't have been hard. But, you know, different companies have different quality when it comes to installation like that. Now, you can install these fans one of 2 ways. You can either install them on this side and in the middle, or in the middle and on this side. Now, because you see that there's no barrier here or here or here or here, what's going to happen if you install them here and here is that a lot of the air is going to bypass as much of the obstacle as possible in order to make it easier for itself, so to speak. On the other hand, if you install them here and here, what will happen is that the fans will not be able to avoid the obstacles and will push through and do a better job of cooling off the 2 towers. So we're going to go with the better configuration. And in order to do that, we first need to Okay, so you're going to want to look at the fan. Now, most fans will turn in the direction that you see the scoop. So in this case, it'll be turning clockwise from this side. And if you look at the back side, it'll be counterclockwise. There are a few fans that actually have special texturing on the backs of the blades on the convex side. And those fans, like Geometric Future has the squamas, and those fans will actually spin this way and use that texturing on the backside to push the air, which I think is kind of inefficient. But these will spin this way and push the air with the scoops. So we know that we need to install it with this sticker facing that way on both fans. Do not install them so that they're like this, because then they'll be fighting each other, unless you're going to do like this, which also is not a good idea, because this fan will be pushing the air from the front of the case back toward the front. This fan, meaning this will not do a good job of heating, and this fan will be pulling the air through, and some of that air will be heated, but it'll actually be doing a good job of heating this one, but this one, or sorry, cooling this one, but this one will not cool well. So what we want to do then is, for this fan, we want to orient where the cables come out in such a way that the cables aren't going to interfere with things. And if you're like really OCD about this kind of stuff, you're going to want to figure out a way to do it so that the cables are kind of hard to see, because you're going to be plugging them in right down here. And so this is the CPU fan, and this is the optional secondary fan. They will run as one, even though they are on 2 different connections. So let's go ahead, and what I'm going to show you is how to add the clips. It's really very simple. I generally try not to install clips on the side where the cable is, because then it becomes a little bit more complicated depending on the design of the clip. You can do it, but you're going to have to experiment with the clip and see which way is actually going to work better. But you're going to install it on the opposite side from the side that's going to be against the heatsink. And that actually gets pulled across and holds onto the side of the heatsink. Now in this case, you can see that the clip is colliding with the cable. So what you'll actually have to do is either, now that you know that, you can do one of two things. You can either pull it through after you've got the clip on, like that, or if you don't realize it, or if you don't mind, take the clip at least partially off, and instead of being over here, have it be over here, and then add that clip back on, and do that. Now, the clip and the cable are not colliding with each other, and that's a good thing. Of course, you've got a really long cable. You can conceal it by somewhat by using a cable tie or a twist tie. It doesn't really matter what. And it is kind of good to keep it out of the way, because otherwise it's going to potentially collide with the fans that are going to be installed on the top of the case, which will be up in this area here, over in this area. So it's good to try to figure out the best way to do that. Now, I don't like having my clips in the same place with the cables, so I'm going to do this a little bit differently. And I think that I'm going to experiment a little bit here with plugging this in and seeing what's going to work best as far as placement is concerned. Now, when you're plugging it in, you see there are two rails there. You're going to want to notice that there is a tab. I don't know how well you can see that. There's a tab right there. So the rails fit the tab. So we plug this in like this. It's just held in place with friction. Make sure we have the fan oriented correctly. And we're going to look. So if we have this, then we have this big thing that we have to tie up, this big loop of cabling that we can tie up like that. But still, because of the sleeving, and I'm not really a big fan of sleeving, it's going to potentially be pushing into the fans up above. So we're going to try it over here. It's better, but still not great. So let's try one more turn. And unfortunately, that's a turn too much. One good turn deserves another, but that was a bad joke. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to put my clips on these two opposite sides. Now, actually, you could try one more thing, and that is to do it like this, but then you can see you've got this sticking straight up, and that's, I think, even worse. So we're going to take this, and be careful that these don't become detached, because that does happen. We're going to take this, and we're going to grab on to this part right here, and we're going to pull on both sides. You can do it singly, or you can do it at the same time. You want to have the fan centered, and then you want to pull until it is holding on fully like that. I don't know if you can see that very well, but it is, both of these parts are nestled within this aisle here. And the same is true on the other side. Now, if you notice that one of the fins, these are called fins, is getting a little bit bent out of shape by the clip, unfortunately, there's not a lot you can do about that, and I really wouldn't worry about it unless it's affecting the fin for the whole length of it, and that shouldn't be a problem. So then, if you are going to have problems with this colliding, you can just take, you can take it like this, and you can have it out of the way like this, or you could potentially go like this, slide it under there, so it's being retained by the clip itself. And now you don't have to worry about it hitting the fans on top. It does stick out a little bit like that, but for me, that's fine. And we're going to do the same thing. And this is going to be a little bit more awkward because we have to do it inside here. But we're going to do the same thing here. So we're going to plug in the fan matching the slot, or so to speak, with the tab. And then we're going to get this on here. And this one over here. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one side, and then I'm going to retain the cable with the other one while I connect it. Oh dear. There we go. Not my favorite clip solution, but it'll work. So now the other side is already connected, so all I've got to do is slide this over there. And you can see, again, I don't think that these clips are the best design I've ever seen for clips, but they hold it in place and they're retaining that cable. So now all you've got is this here. If you figure out some kind of a solution or a better way than that, let me know in the comments. I always love to hear other people's solutions for things to make it more attractive. My concern is that these aren't going to be rubbing against the fans up above here. Because you don't want that, because number one, it's going to damage the cable sleeving. Then once it wears through the cable sleeving, it's going to damage the cable insulation. And once that's done, it's going to be hitting the metal. And that's all assuming that the fan blades that are of the fans up here don't just simply break off from the constant wear and tear. So, not a good idea. And that is all that needs to be done with that. You're wondering, well, how's this going to be powered? Well, these CPU headers can be controlled one of two ways. You can either control them in BIOS, or you can use fan control software, and that often overrides what is set in BIOS. But I would suggest that the best thing to do is to set the fan curves in BIOS to meet your needs, or to keep the CPU cool enough is my priority. But some people, their priority is less noise. If you're having problems with too much noise, you can add additional fans to your computer on the case itself. We'll talk about that later. So we've got our CPU cooler, our RAM, and you can see that basically these fans here are sitting on top of the RAM, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with this touching. But if you feel uncomfortable with it, what you can do is you can hike this up a little bit. Just move it up a few notches by releasing the clips, and then once you're done, you can reclip it on both sides, but it's fine either way. So, for example, you take it and you go up like this. Now, the only bad part about doing it this way is that there is this gap up here, so some of the air from the fan is going to escape out here and do very little to help cool off the heat sink. Not that it's not going to help at all, but it's going to have a small effect rather than a large effect, which I prefer maximum effect. And if this is a fan that has been designed that most of the wind comes off the end of the fan blades instead of the entire length of the fan blades, you're losing a lot of power out of that little space there. So for me, this is not okay. But it's all up to you ultimately, because it's your computer, not mine. And this is going to be for my niece. And I just told her I'm going to be done tomorrow. She's very excited about that. So, does anybody have any questions? Because if you do, please leave them down below in the comments. My next step is going to be putting this into the case and then adding the graphics card back in. But so far it's looking pretty good. Wonder. Yeah, looks really, really good. Now there are some coolers where it's offset in one direction or another, like this way, and that is because of the RAM and the VRMs. So you can adjust it in the direction that best fits your particular setup. This one is bilateral or symmetrical, I guess it would be a better term, in this direction. So there's no way to accommodate better than lifting up the fan on this side. The only other thing that you could potentially do would be to get stronger fans. Now, these are adequate fans. They're not amazing fans, however. Now, let me see if I can find the specifications for these fans. Okay, here we go. The fans have an airflow of only 66.17 CFM, which is about average, and only 1.53 millimeters of water static pressure at maximum. Now, if you want this cooler to do an even better job than what it's doing now, you can buy stronger fans that have a higher static pressure and hopefully also a higher airflow. So you look at the CFMs in the millimeters of water, and that will tell you that. So this is like 1.5 millimeters of water. So you're going to want to find something that has more than that. Ideally, the higher you can afford to go, the better. Now, if you're on a budget, I would suggest something like the Arctic P12 Max, which is about $10 and is over, I believe it is 4 millimeters of water. And if you have $30 to spend per fan, then you can start looking at the Fantex T30, for example, the Superflower Mega Cool, the Iceberg Thermal iScale Extra, and a whole bunch of other ones that have a lot more power to them. One of the top ones, the Fantex T30, is probably the best bang for your buck unless you can get one of the other more powerful ones for a lower price. Some of them are less noisy than others, so you might want to consider that if noise is a concern for you for one reason or another, such as, say, for example, if you have autism and you're trying to find a quiet fan, you could look at other fans. Another option to look at would be Be Quiet Silent Wings Pro 4. And Silverstone has a fan that is very highly rated. Let me look at that for you. It is the, what was it called? The Silverstone FHS 120X. That has got 141.43 CFMs, which is amazing. And let's see. Okay. So I see from here that the maximum, that was the maximum for the FHS. Then the next step down, if you have it at 45 decibels, it's going to be 92.73. If you go down to 40 decibels, then it's going to end up not being as powerful, and it'll only have 72.23 CFMs, and that means it'll be worse than the Be Quiet Silent Wings Pro 4, the Silverstone Shark Force, the Cooler Master Mobius 120 OC, and the Superflower Mega Cool 120, and the Fantex T30 120. If you go down to 35 decibels, well, then it's only at 59.49 CFM, and then it's defeated by the Seasonic Magflow, the EKWB Vardar Evo 120ER, the Cooler Master Mobius 120 OC, Silverstone Shark Force 120 ARGB, EKWB EK Loop FPT 120 DRGB, Superflower Mega Cool 120, and the Fantex T30 120. Now, as far as static pressure is concerned, the one with the best maximum static pressure is the Silverstone FHS 120X again, at 11.81. The Superflower Megacool is number 2 with 6.78 millimeters of water. Then the Phanteks T30 with 6.37 millimeters of water. Silent Wings Pro 4 at 4.91, and so on and so forth. And this is not even a complete list I'm looking at. I'm using Hardware Busters, which is a very good source of information. But, you know, there are so many fans out there, it's hard to be complete. If we drop the speed down so that the decibels are 45, then there are only 3 fans that can be considered, and that's a Silverstone FHS 120 at 6.05 millimeters, Silverstone Shark Force 120 ARGB at 4.13, and the Superflower Megacool at 3.49 millimeters of water. If we drop it down again to 40 decibels, then we have a list of 8, including the Phanteks, then the AlphaCool Apex Stealth Metal Pro Stealth Metal Power 4.11 with the Phanteks at 4.92, the Silent Wings Pro 4 at 4.1, Silverstone FHS at 3.96, the Cooler Master Mobius at 3.63, and so on. If we drop it down another notch to 35 decibels, then the Phanteks is still the king with 3.74, Silent Wings Pro with 2.84, the AlphaCool Apex Stealth Metal Pro at 2.84, and the Silverstone FHS has dropped to 2.78. So as you can see, the Phanteks T30 is ultimately better than these other fans in when you limit the speed. And since a lot of times you don't need it running at maximum speed, that's exactly what's going to happen, is it's going to push to the front. If you take it down to 30 decibels, which is tolerable for most people, then again, the Phanteks T30 will have 2.82 millimeters of water, followed by the Thermalright Tough Fan 12 at 2.57, the XPG Nidec Vento Pro 120 at 2.35. Silverstone FHS is still up there at 2.07, followed by the AlphaCool Apex Stealth Metal Power at 2 millimeters of water. And then the Silent Wing Pro 4 has dropped to 1.98, followed by the Cooler Master Mobius 120 OC at 1.91, and so on. So hopefully that helps give you a little bit of ideas about what you could use. And you can even go down to 25 decibels or 20 decibels. And the Phanteks still is the top fan in the list at those low decibels. So if you're looking for something that's really going to give you the most bang for the buck, and not all these fans are $30. Some are more, some are less. Again, if you want to save some money, the Arctic P12 Max is an excellent choice. It doesn't have the power of the Phanteks T30, but it is like $10. So it starts at about 4 something for the static pressure. And yeah, so let's get this installed into the case now. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.